Yesterday's raid focused on the Rambam in Hilchos Shchita Perek Yud Beis Halacha Yud. The Rambam says mutter lishchitas ha'ma'uberes. It's mutter to shecht a behema ma'uberes. Why? Uber ever me'imayo. The Rishonim say that it's mavur from the Lashon HaRambam that there would have been a havamina that it's asur to shecht a behema ma'uberes. And that's why the Rambam had to tell us that no, it's not asur, it's really mutter. Why would you have thought it's asur? It's because the pasuk says v'shoir oiseh oisoi ve'espenoi loiseh shchatu b'yom echad. And if you shecht a behema muberes, a good chance that the uber is going to die. And if that's the case, it would emerge that you violated the isser in the Torah of oisoi ve'espenoi loiseh shchatu b'yom echad. By the way, the Rambam brings this halacha of mutter lishchetas ha'ma'uberes in Perek Yud Beis and Hilchos Shchita. If you go through Perek Yud Beis and Hilchos Shchita, it's all the halachas of oisoi ve'espenoi. Halacha Aleph starts shoichet oisoi ve'espenoi b'yom echad loikesh. Halacha Yud in the Perek Oisei Vespenoi of the Rambam is where he brings this halacha of mutter lishchetas ha'ma'uberes. It's obvious that that's what the Rambam was addressing, and that is you would have had a havamina that this should be included in the sugya of Oisei Vespenoi loiseh shchatu b'yom echad. Kamash Malon Zok the Rambam that it's not a problem. Why is it not a problem? So the Rambam gave a reason. He said it's because Uber is Eiver me'imayu. We said over for Amer Simcha Nar Sameach. He was masber that what the Rambam meant was that when we say that if somebody shechts a behema muberes, not only is the mother mutter ba'achila, but the uber is also mutter ba'achila. The geder advarim is that we see the shchita working for the uber just like it's working for the mother. And the geder of how that happens is not that we see two shchitas. Kill, there was a shchita on the mother and there was a shchita on the uber. But rather we view the uber as being ever me'imai, so that if there was a shchita on the mother, obviously the shchita works for all the evarim, and included in all the evarim is the uber. And that's the way the Rambam was miyashim. That's the way the Rambam explained why it is that mutter lishcheitas ha'ma'uberes. It's because there's not two ma'aser shchitas taking place over here. There's only one ma'aser shchita taking place. And being that there's only one ma'aser shchita taking place, so obviously this is not a violation of the law in the Torah of oiseh v'espenoi loiseh shchatu b'yom echad. And we mentioned that in this Ramei Simcha licked a gilui to the super lumbis and the chakiras hayaduos that are discussed in the sugyas of Ben Pekua. One chakira is, what's the pshat in the heter of the ben pekua? Is the pshat that the shchita of the mother works for the uber, or is the pshat that a ben pekua doesn't require a shchita? And intim tzaloyma, that it's the shchita of the mother that works for the uber. Is the pshat that we see two shchitas taking place, or it's one shchita because I view the uber as being a chelik of the mother? The Rambam B'Lashoinei Azov says Ramei Simcha was telling you the second side in the first side of the Chakira. And that is that when you shecht a behema muberes, the reason the uber is mutter is because I see up a shchita in the uber. However, the gather of the shchita is uber ever me'imoihu. Uber ever me'imoihu, says the Rambam. It's for that reason there's one shchita taking place, it's not two shchitas taking place, and therefore it's going to be okay. We mentioned that really this lumdis, the way Ramei Simcha learned up the Rambam in Perek Yud Beis, Halacha Yud, in Hilchos Shchita, the Briskerov, in the Michtav to Reb Chatzkel Abramsky, in the end of Chidushay Moran Rizal Levi and Sefer, page 158. So the Briskerov told Reb Chatzkel Abramsky that that's also pshat in the Rambam in the end of Parakeh of Hilchos Macholos Asuris. The Rambam over there discusses a ben pekua that was born to a behemoth treifa, and the Rambam says you're not allowed to eat from that ben pekua. And the Briskerov and Reb Chatzkel Abramsky were mutching a little bit. Why is it that you're not allowed to eat it? L'chura, if there's halacha ben pekua, so why don't we say that the shchita of the mother should work for the uber? What are you going to tell me because the mother's a treifa? Treifa doesn't make it a chesaron in shchita. There's a din that where a behemoth is a treifa, you're not allowed to eat it. But mitzad the shchita, it's kosher. V'haraya, it's metayr midei tumas nevelo. So to the extent that it was a good shchita, and you can't eat the mother because the mother's a treifa, but why can't you eat the uber? The uber is not a treifa, let it be mutter. So said the Briskerov, it's the same lumdis, because the way the heter of Ben Pekua works is that the shchita is one singular shchita, but I view the uber as being echad me'evareh shelo aim. So if the aim is a treifa and bechefza can't be chal heter on the aim, so how can it be chal heter on the uber? And said the Briskerov, look at the lashon of the Rambam. Koras habehema ishach habehema treifa umatzaba ben tishachai tzorach shchita la'atiroi ven shchitas imay my elesloy. I'm skipping mipnei shehu ke'ever me'imay. The same exact lashon. It's because it's ever me'imay. In other words, what Ramei Simcha was medayik from the Rambam in Perek Yud Beis Hilchos Shchita, the Briskerov was medayik from the Rambam in Perakei Hilchas Macholis Asuris. It's the same exact lumdus. That the way the heter ben pekua works is second Maisa Shchita. But rather we view the uber klape, the halachas of ben pekua, as echad me evareh. We were moisef at the end of the raid, and we said that l'chura, it's very mistaber to say, that even though the Rambam seems to be invoking the idea, the Shas idea of Uba Yerechimai, but it's talking that the Rambam doesn't mean to get involved in Uba Yerechimai. Befrat the Rambam in Hilchas Shchita, because if he meant Uba Yerechimai, that would mean that if you hold Uba Lav Yerechimai, it's Aset to Shecht, or Behema Muberes. How come no one ever heard of such a Shita? Nervous. The Rambam's learning up the Gzeres Akos of a Ben Pekua, Behema be-Behema, V'choil be-Behema, and the Rambam's telling you that over here, Kula Al-Mamoydi Uba Yerechimai. We mentioned on top of that for Rabbi Leo Greenside, in his Mikra Eden Parshas told us, he said that throughout Shas, the Gemara brings the Machlokes Uba Yerechimai, Uba Lav Yerechimai, and the Gemara never mentions what the Makar is to Uba Yerechimai. It's mistaber that the Makar is Perik Behema Makasha. And Fakir, the Machlokes Uba Yerechimai, Uba Lav Yerechimai is whether or not Behema Makasha, this lumdus, the way the Rambam understood it, is a global halacha. So you could tell to all the sugis that Chazal shtel to Uba Yerechimai too. Or maybe it's a very mesuya and very local halacha that's only going to get you here, would have no shaykhis to everywhere else. Either way, this was a sikkum, a very brief, abbreviated sikkum of yesterday's right. If you take a look at the Ars Me'ach that we quoted, Hilchas Shchita Perek Beis Halacha, after he learns up the Rambam, he adds one cryptic line. He says, "V'zetam nochain listoin pi atzadaykim." Says Ramei Simcha that this Rambam is a tam nochain listoin pi atzadaykim, and then in parentheses ure'ei b'sefer ha'eshkoil b'shem Rav Meshulam Goyen masha heishav l'minim. Take a look at Sefer ha'eshkoil in the name of Rav Meshulam Goyen, what he adds to the meaning. So if you look at the Sefer ha'eshkoil, it says as follows: V'kosav chad min Rab Vasa leheishav es aminim hachi. One of the Rishonim, Simcha says it was Rav Meshulam Goyen, but one of the Rishonim, one of the Goyenim, was miyashiv the minim as follows. He said, "Valashlil hanimtza bebehema," an uber that was found inside the rechem of a mother. Dinoi sheyehi nita b'shchitas imay. Ve'em by mishum oisay v'esbenai. You should know there's no issue there with oisay v'esbenai. V'koiroi umoitzi es damai umute ba'achila. Why? Because an animal is not considered a ben until it's born. When it's an uber, it's not called a ben. That's when something's called a ben. What do you see from all these psukim? And the Emesid said, Rav Meshulam Goyen, Ubebehema atzmaksiv. You find this by behemoths. It says, Shor, oy kesef, oy eis, ki yivoled. She'encourage shor, oy kesef, oy eis, ad she'yivoled. Until it's going to be born. So when it says in the Torah, Oysev Espenoi, Loisesh Chatu b'yom echad, la'achaleda, Karu ben. It's dafka la'achaleda, it's called Oysev Espenoi. Aber b'mei imoi, einoi Karu ben, umutter, and it's going to be mutter. Says Ramei Simcha, take a look at the Sefer HaEshkol, who quotes Minchad Mirab Vas Rav Meshulam Goyen, who was Meshiv the Minim, who held that it's also to Shechta Bein Muberes, because they held that it's also Espenoi Loisesh Chatu b'yom echad. And what was the teretz that he gave? The teretz he gave was it's not called Benoi. You know why it's not called Benoi? Because Benoi means once it's born. Benoi means where it's Ki im bincha hayoytze michalotzecha. Hine bini hayoytze mimeya. Hinach hara v'yolades bein. And by behema also, shor oikesev oyeis ki yivoled. It's then and only then that it's going to be considered a ben. But the point is, that's why it's not considered oitzev espenoi. The truth is that this Indian of Chuvas Haminim that the Sefer HaEshkol brings Minchan Miravasa, it says it already in the Sefer HaNetzachim. So we've quoted the Sefer HaNetzachim several times over the years. It was written by one of the Rishonim, Rabbi Yontif Lipman Milhuizen. quoted by the Shla as a big mechaber of tefillas. He was a Talmud of the author of the tefillah Baruch Shama V'Hayayla. But Rabbi Yontif Lipman Milhoisen, he wrote a sefer called Sefer HaNetzachim. It's a very interesting sefer. It's a Pirush al HaTorah, and it's all the vikuchim that the Gedolei Yisrael, the Prushim had with the Tzedukim and the Baisusim and all these minim and apikarsim b'meshech the dar. So if somebody wants to prepare Chumash Torah and wants to say over a vikuach at the Shabbos table, make for interesting discussion, so you could open the Sefer HaNetzachim, and literally Al Seder HaParsha, he has these inyanim, and Baruch Hashem over the years, there's a few stickers, we've mentioned some of the shtiklach. In Parshas Emor, V'shoir, oy kesef, oy eis, I'm sorry. Mikan liglagu aleinu hatzedukim. The tzedukim were malaglig on us. She'anu shoichten es ha-behema k'shem meuberes. Because we shecht ha-behema meuberes. And they had tainas. And he goes and he says, essentially, there's a little more there, Ayin Sham, if you want to see it inside. But essentially what the Sefer Eshko brought in Chaber Avos. So this was an Indian that the Rishonim were dealing with. The Rishonim were going up keneged these minim, and they were dealing with this Indian. And their response was, Ki im bincha yoytze michalotzecho, hinoch pnei yoytze mimeyai, hinoch harvi aladet bein. Take a look at the psukim that the Rabbi Yontif Lipman Milhoisen brings. But the Mahalach was, there's no problem with Oisai Vesbenoi. You know why there's no problem with Oisai Vesbenoi? Because Ben is not considered Shara Kesef Eski Yivoli. Actually Yivoli, it's not considered Ben. So what's Oisai Vesbenoi? You shechted of Muberes, you're going to end up killing the Ober. This is not something that should be a problem. The reason not something should be a problem, because at the end of the day, this won't be an issue. The Emes says, if you look in the Rishonim, they bring that really the source of these minim were the Karaim. The source of these minim were the Karaim. So not all minim were created equally, right? We lumped them all together. You have the Kutim, and you have the Tzedukim, and you have the Baisusim, and you have the Karaim, and the minim Vapikarsin, all the Fashidin, Malshinim, and all these Chevra, right? But the Karaim were a very unique group of people. They lived in the Arab countries, Bavel, where, by the way, like the latest Amoraim and the Savoraim and the early Goinim lived, they rear their ugly heads in a meaningful way for the first time in the 9th century, in the times of Reb Sadia Gaon. And they were around for a couple of hundred years. They were very ehrlich, they were very, very frum, but they didn't believe in the Torah Shabbat Peh. So obviously their Yiddishkeit was meaningless. But the point is, them sich gehalten as very, very frum people. They even had a whole Shulchan Aruch of how you were supposed to observe the halachas of the Torah. In the Shulchan Aruch of the Karaim, L'havdol Elef Alfei Havdalas, it says as follows. It says, V'shoir oy seh oisoi ve'es benai kasa b'lashon zachar v'chulu v'al kein asur lishchot behema hara ki hayeled b'meyel. If you're going to say that whatever they have in their meyayim is not called banim, and from that pasuk, which is referring to Yaakov and Esav, and they're in the womb of their mother, and they're called banim. So they tiny. This was the meaning. They said, what kind of business is this? And leheshev esaminim, Rami Shulam Goyin, and Yom Tov Lipman Milhoisen, and Ramei Simcha sends you to this whole shmooze. That's why we're talking about this. This is our license to discuss this. But the point is, they were coming from a pasuk in Parashas Toldos. And they felt the fact that it says that's right. So what's the teretz? What's the teretz? And it's interesting because nobody really addresses it mefurish. Oh, but the emes is, we know what the teretz is. The teretz is, if you take a look at Even Ezra on that pasuk, says, "V'nikru banim al shem soifan." They're called banim al shem soifan. V'chein, and Even Ezra, Kedarke brings rayas that sometimes the Torah talks al shem soifan. So the Torah is describing something happening in real time, but describing the things or the players based on what they will be in the future. They're being described banim al shem soifan because at some point they're going to be banim. But the bottom line is that teretz to the minim is the Even Ezra. It's really al shem soifan. And by the way, we know the Even Ezra was busy with the Karaim. The Rosh HaKaraim was a fellow by the name of Anan. Anan ben David. That was his name. He was from Malchus Beis David. He claimed to be the Reish Galus or whatever. But anyways, his name was Anan ben David. And we know that Nebuchadnezzar quotes Anan. Kiyadu, he don't like him a lot. But he quotes Anan. And sometimes, if you know, the Rishonim, in a very subtle way, they're referencing something that was a very, very big deal that you would never appreciate. V'nikru ponim al shem soifam, there's a milchama going on over here. This is in Sefer HaNitzachim, literally. And the bottom line is, this is sort of the rest of the story. This is what it is that's playing itself out. So the bottom line is Akram Simcha. That you see the Rishonim were already very busy with this vikuach. Because the Minim, specifically the Karaim, were of the opinion that you're not allowed to shech the behema uberes. And in their Shulchan Aruch, this was not something that's okay. And what's the reason? Because the teretz is, we have to be miyash of this. The whole perik of behema makasha. We know you're allowed to shech the behema uberes. So the Minim went ahead and the Minim said, no, that's not called a ben. It's not called a ben. And I have all these rayas that it's not called a ben. That's only going to be mentioned al shem soifa. And if it's not called a ben, so therefore when it's a muberes, there's no issue of oisay vesbenoi. That the Rambam came ahead and the Rambam gave a different teretz, because when the Rambam said now that you know the Karam were infatuated with this idea, it's poshit. If you know anything about the Rambam was busy dealing with the Karam. So the Rambam's going ahead and the Rambam is fighting the Karam, and that's muter lechatchila lishchoit behema muberes lahoitzi miliban shalakaram, and he gave a new reason. So says Rebbe Simcha that this time of the Rambam said tam noch and listim piyat. That's what the Rambam meant to do. Rambam meant to give a different reason. It's interesting that what emerges is really that we have two drachim, we have two mahalchim to answer this tshuvas aminim, and that is maybe it should be aser to shechta beim muberes based on oisay v'ispenoi loisashchat beim echad. We have the mahalach that all the Rishonim seem to have. In their vikuchim, this is the way the Rishonim went. They said it's not called benoi, because as long as it's b'mei imoy, it's not going to be called benoi. And then we have the Mahalach of the Rambam. The Rambam says it's because Uber Ever Me'imoyu, and being that Uber is Ever Me'imoyu, it's one Maisa Shchita, there's no Shchitas taking place. Now what did the Karam hold? So we know the Karam held that the Uber is considered a ben. They had a raya. But clearly they also held that in the world of Ashoichet Behema Muberes, in the Londis of it, the way you would see it is that there's two Shchitas taking place. There's a Shchita in the mother and there's a Shchita in the Uber, and as a result it would be like Shchatu. It would be two shchitas. That's not something that's okay. Meaning they held not like what we hold, which is that an Uber is not called a ben. Also, not like the lumdus of the Rambam of Uber is not even mimoi. So the fact that they were an oimid on the oimik of Mei Simchen or Sameach and Mar Nagriz in the Michtav, that doesn't come as a big chiddush to me. But the bottom line is, they say, well, there's a shchit on the Uber, there's two shchitas going on. They missed the whole boat. They didn't know this Ar Sameach. They didn't know the Brav in the Michtav, and as a result, this is what's going on over here, right? So again, they're coming from number one, there's two shchitas taking place, and number two, the Uber is a ben. The tshuva to the minim is one of two things. You could go with the derech of the Rambam, and that is, it's one shchita, it's not two shchitas, because the geder ben pekua is ubi erechim, right? Or you could go the way the Rishonim went, and that is that an uber is not considered a ben. I just want to be moisef one hour. That is, it's Yudua, that Reb Kiva Eger, in Shailos Tshuvas Reb Kiva Eger, and this is the Simon Kufayim Beis, he asks, very interesting question. He says that why is it mutter for a man to be boil ishtoi meuberes? There should be a problem of being ba'al bitoy. To the extent that his wife is meuberes and she's carrying a bas. Now you have to know why Reb Kiveger only asked from bas and not from ben, but Kiveger's kasha is from bas. Why is there no problem of being ba'al bitoy? Azoy freit Reb Kiveger, this is a tshuva that was written to his son Reb Shlomo Eger. Zot Reb Kiva Eger, you got to tell me what shaykh is. He's not being Baal Bit. He said, but the Gemara says in Masechtas Tamura that in the event that there was a behema that was nirvas, so somebody was revei with a behema, so we know that behema is also to put on the mizbeach. But it's not only the behema that's also to put on the mizbeach. Any uber that was inside the behema at the time of the reviyah is also going to be aser. And in the lashon of the Gemara, because he uvlada nivalo, because we say side the behema and side the uber were both somehow part of this bia. If that's the case, Freit Reb Kiva Eger, if there's an idea of he uvlada nivalo, say hech mutter beishtoi meuberes, He uvlada nivalo, this person is being Baal Bita. Azoi fragt Reb Kiva Eiger. His mahalach is even more surprising. So Reb Kiva Eiger, b'muscharishin, I think the teretz is, because we know a ketana that's pchusa mibaskim l'shana v'yoyim echad is not a basbiyah. So being that she's an uber, so she's less than 3 years old. She's less than 3 years old, so she's not a basbiyah. So it's not a maisabiyah. Of Reb Kiva Eiger, it's a problem. The reason is because we know that a Zochar, a katan, who's less than 9 years old, is also not a barbiyah. Yet, Chazal said that a katan who's less than 9 years old, that's Baal. Midrabanan, we treat it like a maisabiyah. It's negay a lot of different halachas. So if midrabanan al kapanim, a katan who's less than 9 years old's biyah is a biyah. So a ketana who's less than 3 years old biyah should also be considered a biyah. So l'chura al kapanim midrabanan should be a problem. Instead, midiraisa, she's not a bas biyah, but midrabanan should be a problem. So Reb Kiva Eiger gets pasha. The only time the Rabbanan say something is aser is where if the Rabbanan wouldn't institute their Isser, it would be mutter. A katan who's less than 9 years old is not a barbiyah. Based on that, if he would do a maisabiyah, it would be nothing. Chazal had to come and say, we don't want it to be nothing. So they said, midrabanan, the biyah is going to be considered a biyah. If someone would be baal, it wouldn't be nothing. The reason it wouldn't be nothing is because to the extent that she's not a bas biyah, it's ki'ilu, the person was born eitzim v'avonim, and he's going to be over the isser of hashchas hazer levatala. So kumtais, it's anyways going to be asr. So Zok Reb Kiva Eiger, half of a fellow. It comes out that if someone's ba on a ketana pchusa mibas gimel shana v'yayim echad, midday rice, it's nothing because she's not a bas biyah. Midday rabbanon, it's also nothing because why would the rabbanon go ahead and make something aser that otherwise is anyways aser because of hashchas hazer levatal? So there's no isnday rice and no isday rabbanon. What is there? There's an Issa Zer Levatala. In this case, where it's being Baalish, there's no Zer Levatala. So based on that, Zok Reb Kiva Eiger, Advarim Mefursamim, this is not going to be an issue. So he's Zok Reb Kiva Eiger. So Reb Kiva Eiger was muching that based on the Gemara, he who Vlad and Nirvo, it should be Aser for a man to be Baalish Namuberes because he's being Baal Bitoy. The teretz is, she's a Pchus Baskim Shana V'Yamechad, I Issa Rabbanon, there's no reason to make such a mitzvah because it's Zer Levatala, but here's not Zer Levatala, so based on that, it's going to be Mut. This Reb Kiva Eiger bothered me tremendously. Tremendously. Kiva Eiger is asking that if somebody's ba on Ishtay Muberes, he should be a Baal Bitay. Why? Because the Uber is his daughter. Whose taina is that? That's the Karoyim. Kiva Eiger is naming on the Karoyim in his Karoyim. What's Pashp Shan with Kiva Eiger? Imam is bothered me. Kiva Eiger is naming on the Karoyim. That is the Vikuach. That's the Chuvas Aminim. Open the Sefer Eshkol. Take a look at the Sefer Anitzachim. This was the grace of Vikuach. The shaila was, is there oisev esbenoi, is the shchat b'mechad uber or not? The Karam said, yeah, it's considered benoi. The Mina said, no shaykhis. Shoyrei kesveis, I'd say yivolet. All the psukim by humans, for sure it's like that. In a charav yaladet, it's not, if it's not benoi and oisev esbenoi, it's not bita, it's vos vil Reb Kiva Eiger. Kiva Eiger is naming on the Karam, it's mamish, it's a milsa to me. It bothered me tremendously. Then this is another Reb Kiva Eiger. This Reb Kiva Eiger is in his Agoyis and Shulchan Aruch. It's in Ilchos Basav V'Chalav. It's in Siman Pei Zayin. It's a hafalik Reb Kiva Eiger. We've mentioned this a few times over the years. Reb Kiva Eiger has a suffix whether or not it's mutter for a person to eat basar with the chalav of a behemoth treifa. Now, why would you think the chalav of a behemoth treif is different than any chalav? So we mentioned this halacha yesterday. There's a halacha in Basav Chalav. It says in the Torah, Tafka, a behemoth that's really a same. If a behemoth is not really a same, at that point there's no Issa Basav Chalav Medei Raisa. Chazal say a treif is enoi moiled. So if that's the case, comes out a treif is not really royally Yoseim. If a treif is not royally Yoseim, so based on that, maybe there should be no Issa Basav Chalav to eat Basa together with the Chalav of a treif. So Reb Kiva Eiger, I'm not sure. You know why I'm not sure? Because in as much as it's true that a treif is any royally Yoseim, a treifa ain't in moiled, but no one said a treifa can't become pregnant. Maybe it could become pregnant. Maybe it's in a moiled, it can't follow through with the pregnancy. But maybe to become pregnant it could. And Zok Reb Kiva Eiger have a raya from a Rashi in Sanhedrin that as soon as somebody has a child, even in utero, at that point, the mom is a mom and the tat is a tat. This is a whole shmooze. But the mom is a mom and the tat is a tat. If that's the case, the fact that treif ain't in moiled is not a raya that it can't be called a name, because you don't have to be moiled to be called a name. As long as you have an uber, that already would be enough. This Reb Kiva Eiger is l'shitasa in the tshuva. Reb Kiva Eiger is naming on that you could be a ben or a bas in utero. Memela, the parent could be a father or a mother when the child is in utero, right? If you're a mother when you have a uber, then the uber should be a bas. And if the uber is a bas, you should be considered a mother. It's the flip side of the same coin. They should be totally separate. So these two Reb Kivegas are saying the same thing. That we view the bas as a bas, hence the mother as being a mother. This is mamish the time of the kutim. What's Pasha Pshat? I mamish don't know. This is the time of the karam. Abului the mistafina. Maybe it's Pasha. Could be it's like really, really, really Pasha. And that is, it's true, Rav Meshulam Goyen in the Sefer Eshkol and Rabbi Yontif Lipman Milhuizen in the Sefer Anitzachim, the way they were Meshav the Minim was that it says, Oysev Espenoli, it's a Shchat Be'emechet, this is not called a ben. But the Rambam had a different mahalach. Rambam didn't say that. The Rambam came with a whole lumdis. The Rambam said, because Ubi Yerechimoy, Ken Zayn state in Rambam, that the Rambam klapi that Shaila held like the Karam. That the Rambam Taka held. The Rambam Taka held that it is a ben. Because if the Rambam held it's not a ben, then Mutal Ishcha Ben Muberes, as Oysev Espenoli, the whole question's dead on arrival, because Avada, it's not a problem. It's not Oisei Ves Benoi. You don't have to get involved in the super duper lumnus of the Sameach and the Beskirov and the Michtav in terms of how Ben Pekua works. It's Pashat that it's going to be mutter. It's going to be mutter because it's not considered Bnei. I think from the fact that the Rambam didn't say that, from the fact that the Rambam got involved in his super duper lumnus, from the fact that the Rambam said what he said, that's the biggest raya in the world, maybe, that the Rambam held that really it is considered a ban, afilu in utero. If it's considered a ban, it's considered a bas. It could be this Reb Kivegan, the Tshuva, and Reb Kivegan is Agois and Shulchan Aruch. It's all going in Shitas HaRambam. Avad in that vikuach with taking on the position of the Karan. But ironically, counterintuitively, lahavdol of alfei avdolis. Somehow the Shitas HaKaran in the world of the Rambam was the Shita. It's a pella. But it was Taka the Shita. And based on that Shita, Freit Reb Kivegan, his Kasha and Zok Reb Kivegan, his ha'ara that he says in Agois and Shulchan Aruch, it's in Pei Zayin. But just to end with one last ha'ara, and that is, I saw in the Sefer Mikra Eda from Rabbi Leo Greenside. It's in the same exact shtickle. So he quotes from a sefer called Ginzei Shechter. So Ginzei Shechter, again, we're going where we're really not supposed to go, is a collection of works that were gathered by Solomon Schechter. So Solomon Schechter was, right, Kiyodua, and one of the founding fathers of the modern conservative movement. But Solomon Schechter, at one point, was on the faculty of Cambridge University. During that time, the Cairo Geniza was discovered. It was discovered by people that were on the Cambridge faculty, and they bought it for a song. It was definitely oina, what they paid for it, and they had it shipped over to London. And Solomon Schechter spent decades of his life going through the different things that were found in the Geniza, and it's known as Ginzei Schechter. That's what it's known as. Rabbi Leo Greenside, in that piece, Mikra Ha'eda, this great guy, and he quotes Ginzei Schechter. And he says, if you take a look in Chelik Beis, and he quotes the page, it's page 478. This is all the Shulchan Aruch, the Karam, all their interesting halachas, their strange customs that they had. One of the halachas that they had was that if your wife is pregnant, you have to be pirish from your wife. It's usher for a man to be ba'al ishtay mu'beres. Zok Rabbi Leo Greenside, it's pashut, it's the Karam l'shitasayu. The Karam that held that it's usher to shechta behema mu'beres, because oisay ves benoi lo yisashchatu b'yoymechet, and state alumnus, because it says by Yisroel to Abana Mikirba. So based on that, there's going to be a problem. Well, if that's the case, it can't be Baal Ishtai Me'oberes. You know why? Reb Kivegas Kasha. Because every time a person's being Baal Ishtai, he's also being Baal Bitoi, based on the Gemara Tpura Daflamet that says, he Vlad and Irvu. So because of Reb Kivegas Kasha, they held there's going to be a problem. Fakert, Al Rishonim Anu Mitztarin, that if you name on the Shita Sakaram, that is Reb Kivegas Kasha. With those super duper lumdus. Again, the Karam didn't know the Samech and the Briskarov. They didn't know Reb Kivegas Cheshben either. It doesn't surprise me, but Al Koparim, this whole idea that the Karam would hold they have to be punished from Ishtay Me'uberes, this was Lishita, this is Rabbi Leo Greenside Zahara, it's the Lishita Sayu, the Karam, that the Karam held that something's considered a ban or a bas, afilu in utero, and based on that, this would be an issue.